Welcome to everyone who's joining. It's just about 2 o'clock, so I'm going to get started. This is week 2 in our Beauty is Wellness Empowered Living series. This is going to be a 6-part series in all, and all of these sessions will be available and recorded to watch at a later time if you want to rewatch them or share them. Last week, our topic was the healing power of our beauty rituals. So we really got to look at beauty beyond the surface, why beauty has the power to change more than just your appearance, why it can actually be a beneficial factor in healing, in resilience, in day-to-day joy, and lifting your mood. So we got to talk about all of the good parts of beauty that go deeper than just surface level. Today, we're going to look at the ingredients in our products. So our topic is picking the healthiest products, and I'm going to give you a background on why this is an important core part of this conversation, and also tips for shopping for healthy personal care, whether you are in treatment, beyond treatment, whether you just want to share these tips with family members or friends. I'm going to give you all of that today and a nice overview of what beauty is like here in the US and our regulations. Next week, we will move on to beyond skincare, favorite self-care practices that support our beauty and well-being. So for today, we're talking about how to find the healthiest skincare products. I want to start by saying a lot of the terms around our skincare that you see on products or used by companies to market products are not regulated. So they might say that they have a clean product or a natural product or healthy, and none of those terms have any regulation behind them. So it's up to you to take it a step further and figure out, as the consumer, is this a product that I believe meets the standards that I have for my body? And that's not easy because we aren't always educated in how to do that, or what is going to be concerning for our bodies. And I will say it's not as simple as synthetic is bad and natural is good, because there are lots of synthetic ingredients that are safe for the body. And there are even some natural ingredients that are concerning and might be something that we react poorly to. So it really ends up being looking at particular ingredients that might be concerning and also knowing our own bodies and what works for us. So like the ingredients in our foods, many of the personal care product ingredients we apply are readily absorbed, and they end up influencing key aspects of our health. So this is our skin barrier, but rather than being a impermeable layer, it's very easy for products and ingredients to permeate, to be absorbed into the bloodstream, or even think about products that you spray. They could be dispersed in the air and inhaled. So personal care products account for regular, repeated ingredient exposures. And I would say this is more than the majority of other consumer products. We use our personal care products often day after day. The average woman uses 12 products daily. Most women fall somewhere between 5 and 30 products a day. And within that group of products, you have about 200 different ingredients. The average teen girl uses even more, 17 products a day. Men use an average of 6 different products containing 85 different ingredients. So there's lots of exposure here. And ingredient testing often fails to account for mixtures. So not just one particular ingredient that you might be getting in a small dose, but what happens with the synergistic effect of these ingredients? So when ingredients interact, how does that affect our health? We know that long-term repeated exposure to some of these cosmetic chemicals is a major health concern for industry workers like nail technicians, hairstylists, estheticians. So we want to make sure that we're protecting those workers as well as ourselves. Now, a quote that I love to share around this conversation comes from the President's Cancer Panel report back in 2010, so under President Obama. And this was titled, Reducing Environmental Cancer Risk, What We Can Do Now. And really, this whole conversation for me is just about how to be practical. I don't want this to be fear-based or overwhelming, but what really can we do day to day to minimize our exposure to ingredients that might be concerning? And the quote from the report said, a precautionary, prevention-oriented approach should replace our current reactionary approach to environmental contaminants. This is how we kind of go about dealing with environmental contaminants as a society. When we find out something is harmful, then we back away from it. But we want to replace that with a prevention-oriented approach. So a precautionary prevention-oriented approach should replace current reactionary approaches to environmental contaminants in which human harm must be proven before action is taken to reduce or eliminate exposure. This approach should be the cornerstone of a new national cancer prevention strategy that emphasizes primary prevention. I could not agree more. We're not there yet, but we are taking strides, and the more we know about what we're choosing, the closer we get. So a couple of developments that have happened in recent history. In December 2022, there was a new act signed into law, the Modernization of Cosmetics Regulation Act of 2022, that's going to give us a lot more protections over the products that are allowed on our shelves. It's being phased in very slowly and hasn't done a lot to change the products on our shelves yet, but it is promising. Prior to this, we haven't had any meaningful change to our cosmetic legislation since the 1930s. So we're talking nearly 100 years at this point. It's time for us to have a little bit better regulation, so as consumers, we don't have to do so much work in vetting our products. But until we get there, that's why we have today's conversation. So what can you do if you want to get started with healthier personal care? Number one is don't freak out, but do learn more. So don't look at everything in your routine and think, okay, this is all out to get me. I have to throw it all out, and worry and concern yourself, because I think the stress is just as harmful as anything that might be affecting your system and your hormones. So just take a very calm approach to learning more. And as you finish up a product, maybe you rebuy and learn about that particular product and choose what feels, good to you next time. So next, take some time to notice your habits and your most used products. So if you can pinpoint, okay, what are the top 5 personal care products that I use the most? Every day I get up, I'm using toothpaste, I'm using shampoo, deodorant, maybe I'm using a body lotion head to toe. Maybe there's a lip balm that I'm applying, a dozen times every day. Think about in your particular routine what the products are that you use the most often over the greatest area of your body, and start there. Those are going to make the biggest difference in your exposures. Now, I'm going to share with you today some top ingredients that really help if you can commit them to your memory, just to avoid, or if not, start shopping at a store that does some of the vetting for you. And there are a handful of stores that are, I would call them more indie retailers. They're not as big as Sephora and Ulta, but they were founded on the idea of being very selective with the products that they allow on their shelves, and choosing ingredients that they feel are going to be the healthiest for their customers. So these are stores like Credo, like Detox Market, like Beauty Heroes, even to a degree Whole Foods, although ownership of Whole Foods has changed over the years and some of their standards have changed, but their whole body section was really founded on that premise of having a set of standards for the products that they sell. So when you choose a retailer like that, they are doing a little bit of that work and a little bit of that vetting for you. And that's a nice way to go about choosing if it feels overwhelming. Next, don't sweat the small stuff is what I say. So say you want to wear your favorite waterproof mascara to a wedding this summer. Say you want to spray on your favorite perfume for a memorable scent. The kind of once in a while exposures here and there are not the big picture. So again, go back to those top 5 products, the core products that you're using again and again, and focus your energy and your attention there. And don't worry if it's a minimal exposure here and there. It's what we're repeating day after day that makes the biggest difference. Also, seek out salons that you trust, brands that you trust. This will help you with all of your different beauty interactions, because I know we're not just talking about a product that you buy at a store and bring home. We're talking about all of the beauty services that you have in your life. When you do shop, you also want to practice ignoring the claims on packaging. So look at the front of a beauty product or its packaging like an advertisement. Remember what I said about those claims being unregulated. No one is there vetting if a product is clean or safe or non-toxic or natural. Those terms don't mean anything in terms of regulation. So if someone says that this is a natural product, or say it has a picture of a flower or leaves or something, green or natural on the packaging, you still want to turn it over, look at that ingredient list and see for yourself if the ingredients are going to match and substantiate. Now, when it comes to ingredients, you might not always want to choose the cheapest product as well. You often pay for purity, for small batch production in some of these brands, for ethical sourcing. So just consider the investment that you might be making in some of these products. If it's something that you really know that you're going to be using often and over a large area of your body, you might need to pay a little more to make sure that they're the ingredients that you want. Now let's go back to my list of top ingredients to avoid. So really the category of ingredients that we focus most of our attention on here at Unite for Her are the endocrine disruptors. So these are ingredients that tend to affect your endocrine system and your hormone balance, and they also have strong links to autoimmunity, fertility and hormone issues, and to cancer. So we know we'd really like to minimize our exposure to these types of ingredients. And there's a couple of different key ingredients that fall under this category that I'm going to share with you now. The first category of ingredients that falls under that endocrine disruptor headline are the parabens. This one I think was the type of ingredient that lots of people heard about early on. It's a very widely used preservative, or it really used to be, it would show up in a range of personal care products. Now lots of parabens have been phased out, but this is a really easy one to look for on an ingredient list that is almost like a litmus test of what the other ingredients are going to be in the formula. If you happen to look at an ingredient list and you see one of those paraben names, and that might be methylparaben, ethylparaben, propylparaben, typically paraben is the suffix of the word, that to me will be reflective of you need to look deeper and see what other ingredients are there as well, because most companies at this point have identified parabens as being problematic and they have swapped them out with safer preservatives. So we've seen also that parabens demonstrate estrogenic effects in the body. There was a study looking at the effect of very low doses of parabens on HER2-positive breast cancer cells, and they found that parabens turned on estrogen receptors and significantly sped up the rate of tumor growth. So as a result, this was a Silent Spring Institute study. They found that paraben use can lead to faster, more aggressive tumor growth. So again, this is not going to be in every case, but we know that these do function as endocrine disruptors in the body, so they're a great one to avoid. Now, the next category, phthalates, are not always found on ingredient lists because they sometimes are mixed in with fragrance or perfume in a product. A 2022 study found a positive association between exposure to phthalates and breast cancer incidence. In cosmetics, phthalates often show up as an undisclosed ingredient in synthetic fragrance. That could be a scented skincare, it could be perfume, home fragrance candles, detergents, cleaning products. All of these can have fragrance with phthalates in them. To reduce your phthalate exposure from a fragranced product, you want to switch to products that are going to use a natural fragrance. And this might say fragrance from natural sources on the label. It might say no synthetic fragrance. It might even say phthalate-free fragrance, because there are companies now that are using safer synthetic fragrances that do not have the phthalates, because this is a known issue. So you want to be careful about where those fragrances are coming from and be aware of phthalates as being ubiquitous in synthetic fragrance. The next big one that's an endocrine disruptor are the chemical sunscreens, especially oxybenzone. Oxybenzone is a widely used sunscreen active. Just like phthalates and parabens, it's suspected to have estrogenic, endocrine disrupting effects in the body. It's also been banned from sale in Hawaii due to documented damage to reefs and ocean life. So rather than going down the route of the chemical sunscreens like oxybenzone. Look for sunscreens that have physical blocks or mineral blocks like zinc oxide and titanium dioxide. Those are going to be a different form of sunscreen, of blocking the sun. And typically it'll say non-nano. So non-nano zinc oxide, non-nano titanium dioxide appear to be the safest form of sunscreens. So those three all are under the category of endocrine disruptors. Another category that we want to look out for are the formaldehyde-releasing chemicals. Now we know formaldehyde is an established human carcinogen. You will not see formaldehyde on the ingredient list of your products, but you will see it in terms of ingredients that mix together and form formaldehyde. So we call them formaldehyde releasers. They're present in nearly 1 in 5 cosmetics. So these ingredients, when you add them to water, slowly release formaldehyde over time. I will put some of these ingredients in the chat because some of them are difficult to spell and read. These are our formaldehyde releasers. So we have here diazinyl urea, imazinyl urea, methylisoazalenone, quaternium-15, DMDM-hydantoin, which we see a lot, bronopol, and methylene glycol are the ones for, if you're listening and you're not looking in the chat, those are going to be the terms to look for the formaldehyde releasers. And again, it won't say formaldehyde on your ingredient list, but you will see some of those terms which are going to release formaldehyde when combined with water. So this gives you some categories to look for. Look for those paraben preservatives, look for synthetic fragrance, and be careful about the type of fragrance in your products. When you're going for sunscreens this year, look for the mineral blocks, the zinc and the titanium, and be careful with your formaldehyde releasing chemicals. So that's an easy way to get started. And like I said, if this feels overwhelming, if you think already I don't have the time and the energy to vet my products, start with a retailer or a brand that you definitely trust, and that makes it easier. As you go out shopping, you'll be able to choose what feels the best to you. Now, best ways to share this information, if this feels like something that you want to continue to spread the word on, remember the goal is to educate and empower here, not to cause fear. We don't want anyone to feel like they have to throw out everything and run from their personal care, because like we talked about last week, there are so many benefits to having that self-care routine. I like to think of these kind of choices similar to our food choices in that there are both nourishing options and there are junk foods, right? So there are going to be junk food beauty products that make their way into our lives, and it's all about what we do more of the time that makes the difference. And of course, we can continue to take action to support updates to regulation to make sure that these types of regulations around our beauty products continue to advance. Now, real quick, I'll go over just category by category some of the questions that I get commonly in different areas. The first one is deodorant. Everyone wants to know, what do I need to choose for deodorant? I want a deodorant that's going to be effective, but I also want to make sure that I have the safest product. So the top concerning ingredient in antiperspirant is aluminum, which works to block sweat. There's currently no evidence that aluminum affects breast cancer development. However, there is evidence that aluminum in the body affects the endocrine system by changing how the body produces or responds to estrogen over time. Now, does that mean over a period of time that can affect breast cancer development? Possibly, and that's one of the concerns there, is that we know aluminum in the body is affecting the endocrine system. So what you can do is look for, again, the deodorant rather than the antiperspirant, since aluminum is one of those antiperspirant ingredients. You also want to look at the fragrance source in your deodorants. You want to make sure you don't have any of those phthalate-containing synthetic fragrances. Next one that I get a question on a lot is feminine care. So this was a conversation recently when we talked about titanium dioxide in our feminine care products, ingredients that are meant to whiten those compounds to make them look nice and bright. Conventional feminine care products, they are often made with synthetic materials, and that's another risk for endocrine disrupting compounds. So anything that is made from plastic ingredients, water bottles, those fragrances tend to contain those endocrine disrupting ingredients. And if you're using those in your vaginal area, that tends to be a highly absorbable area of your body. And you want to make sure that you're choosing products that are not going to give you that exposure there. Nail polish. Nail polish is commonly one of the first beauty products that a girl may be exposed to. So I feel like painting your nails is one of the first things that you do in terms of your beauty routine. Historically, nail polishes contain some of the most toxic ingredients. These are not products that have a natural version because essentially they are paints. And they used to include phthalates, formaldehyde, a toxic ingredient called toluene. Now, there was sort of through the 2010s a movement to phase out a lot of those ingredients. So you will see now on nail polish companies' labels that they might call themselves 3 free or 4 free. This is referring to how many of those ingredients they have phased out. However, the safety of nail products kind of varies brand by brand still. So it's still something to look into to make sure the ingredients are aligned with what you want to put on your body. And then finally, hair dyes and relaxers. So we have a specific Ask the Experts that you can replay on hair dye and relaxers and concerns around those products. So there is a documented relationship between relaxers and increased breast cancer risk. There are over 5,000 different chemicals in hair dye products. And women who relax their hair regularly have a 30% increased risk of breast cancer. So there is a big issue there, and this is a category that you want to look at if you're using these products repeatedly. So just a little overview of a couple of different areas that come up a lot. As I mentioned, we do have an Ask the Experts that goes in depth on hair dye and relaxers. We have a whole section, another Ask the Experts on nail health. We do have one on hair health, and I know that came up as a question last week. So lots of different areas that you can dive into in the Unite for Her archives to learn more. But hopefully this gives you an overview of what you want to be thinking about, what you want to be concerned about if these are products that you're using very often in your routine. I'm going to check out some of your questions now. So I see someone responded to the question about phthalates. Your spelling is almost perfect. P-H-T-H-A-L-A-T-S. So there it is. P-H-T-H-A-L-A-T-E-S. That's phthalates. It's a word that you might hear or you might see in research. Again, one of those plasticizing ingredients that helps fragrance to last longer that you might find in flexible plastics and packaging that we really want to minimize our risk to. Trudy asks, do you believe that organic cosmetics, creams, and hair products are clean? I don't personally love the word clean. I think, again, it's undefined, unregulated. I much prefer to say, well, is that going to be healthy for my body? Is this a healthy choice? Because there's sort of different levels of healthy choices. Like I said, food that might be nourishing, food that might be junk food. When it comes to organic, I would say they have a better chance of being healthier choices. You certainly, just because a product has organic ingredients doesn't mean that everything in it is going to be something that you want on your body. But I do find that companies that are conscious enough to be using organic ingredients and including those, typically they are conscious about what is in the rest of the personal care product formula as well. So to me, that's a signal of, yes, this is potentially where I want to be going to choose a product to put on my body. And it does kind of bode well. But again, because a lot of these terms are unregulated, you do need to look further. Organic is regulated. So if something is certified organic, that's going to be a seal that is regulated on a product. And that one you cannot claim unless you have a certain percentage of organic ingredients. And then you mentioned hair products. A lot of salons will say, oh, we have organic hair dye. I feel like there really is no true organic hair dye, but there are certainly much less toxic versions than what we find used conventionally. So are you going to get organic? Kind of the same as with nail polish. I doubt you will get organic unless it's a very unique company, but in general, you can find options that are much less toxic. Let's see, what if we need antiperspirant? Again, it's something that you might find that you want to choose for your body, but just looking overall at your routine and what your exposures are is what I would recommend. Is there an app you recommend? There are a bunch of different ones. You mentioned the Yuka app here. There's EWG. There's Think Dirty. There's so many different ones that you can choose. I haven't personally used the Yuka app, but I know there are a bunch out there. So if that's your style to go through products and scan them, that's certainly a great tool that you can use. These are great questions. Someone asked if I can repeat the stores that have vetted their products. So Credo Beauty was one of them. I mentioned the Detox Market. I mentioned Beauty Heroes, which is an online store, although they do have one brick and mortar location in California. What else did I mention? I think those are the big ones that I mentioned, unless I'm forgetting. There are also some local stores if you are in the Philadelphia area, like Unite for Her is. There are a few in Philadelphia itself, and you may find some in your city or nearby that have the same kind of ethos for vetting products that they choose to stock on their shelves. So look around in addition to the big chains, and you find a lot of options out there. So these are fantastic questions. I hope this was good information for this week. And again, next week we'll be doing beyond skincare. So favorite self-care practices that support beauty and well-being, and we'll go from there. So I will see you all next week. Thanks for joining.